Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in today's video I wanted to talk to you about creative problem solving. Here I have a really cute little jewelry making component, and you can see up here at the top they've got these little loops that you would string through, but on this side the loop is broken. I don't know how to solder, and I really want to be able to use this component, for something, but I'm not sure what yet, and I hate to throw anything away, so I'm going to, without much of a plan, take y'all through my process of how I'm going to figure out what I'm going to use this for. So let's get started. So here's another view of our little component. You can see it's just broken through just right there, so everything else on it is still pretty good, I think. And I also have a couple of scrap pieces of 18 gauge copper core titanium colored parawire. And then I am going to be using off the spool some 26 and 28 gauge in, again, the titanium colored silver plated wire. All of this is dead soft. Parawire, the company that I get just about all of my wire from, all of their stuff runs towards the very soft end of the spectrum, which is really nice. Now, something that we could use this for initially before wrapping it into anything else would be to make a texture sheet out of it. So for polymer clay. So here I have just some extra clay. Please forgive my dog making weird noises. He's wearing the cone of shame still and decided to start kicking himself in the head. So that'll probably be pretty prevalent in this video. So here we have our polymer clay. This is just a plain original Sculpey, and you can not have to worry a bit about getting it like dirty or gross or anything. So there's some dog fur in it for good measure. And then I just want to take the patterned side of this and get a nice solid imprint. And I can actually use different sculpting tools that have flat bottoms or rounded bottoms to push uniformly into our little piece here. And then I am actually going to come in and try pulling it out while keeping the design intact. There it goes. Maybe. There we are. And so now from here, I'm going to take my tissue blade. There'll be links for all the tools and materials down below in the video description. And I can save this for if I wanted to make another imprint or just what have you. And I'm going to use this tissue blade to just slide underneath. It leaves a little bit on the table, but it keeps us from distorting the rest of our piece. And then I'm going to use a round ball tool to blend out any little mishaps. And so now we can actually, I'll bake this in a 270 degree toaster oven. I just put it in cold and then kind of go from there. I got a little bit of uneven pressing, so what we can do is mop up our extra clay and try again. So I'm going to smush this down, roll it out with my hands, roll it out with my roller, and I'm actually going to show you guys how to use a repel for this one. And what I'll be doing is I'm just going to spray the surface with a little bit of water. Rub that around. And this will help, keep our little component here from sticking. We can actually probably get this just a little wet too. Now I'm just going to take it and smoosh. Try my best to get a nice even on both sides contact. And I want it to be nice and deep. So again, I'm going to grab these tools and try to press down evenly, on like all different points. And so now we can try again to lift this up and out. There we go. And it lifts out quite nicely whenever you use the water. Oh, just wiggle it. There we go. You could also use Sculpey Repel Gel and just bake it with the piece in there and then pop it out afterwards, but I find I have a better success rate doing it like this. So now I'm just gonna slide underneath that. And now I can actually bake both of these, and it looks like it just takes deeper on that side, but that's all right. But I'll bake both of these and probably give one of them away either on my Facebook page or Instagram or to my patrons. I don't know yet. But that way we can test them out and see which one worked better, and kind of we'll revisit that in another video. But this is something that, especially when you have things with really intricate, cute little components like that, there's no reason to not experiment and try this out. So now moving on to the wire wrapping portion of this tutorial. I've cleaned and dried our component, making sure that there aren't any little hunks of clay or anything stuck in any of the parts. I do think I'm going to come in and just trim off these little loops. So I'm just going to get it nice and flush and snip. And then get it nice and flush and snip. And now we can come through with a flat file or a rounded file and just kind of shape that down a little bit more. You could also use an emery board. So to file that down, I'm just gonna there we are. You could use a Dremel, but considering I'm not 100% on what alloy of metal this is, I prefer to not make it very hot. And you know, you can totally get it done with just a hand file. And I check my work constantly, just with my finger to feel and see if it's smooth. Check it with your eyeballs, make sure it looks nice, you know. There we go. And so now, it doesn't really look like there was anything missing from there. Put your tools away like a good crafty person. Trying to work on that. Toss away your scrap. Okay, so I think I'd like to turn this into a pendant. So I've dug out some 2mm silver beads. This one odd bead that I've had like floating around for ages. I mean, it's beautiful, but I don't really know what to do with it. And I think I want to have it centered up like right here. And I think I'm going to have it designed so that it hangs like this. And then with the scrap wire that I'm looking at, oh, okay, so if this is laying like that, and I've got these two pieces of scrap, then I think I'm going to wrap it almost urn style. So I'm going to start weaving these guys together. And you can see along this bottom edge here, they have all these nice little bumps. That one looks like it's missing, but these give me a little hole that I can lace through. And so that will give me something that I can attach our wire weaving to. So I'm going to begin with a 28 gauge. And I'm going to do myself a full arm's length, because hopefully that'll get me where we're going. Snip it. And I'm going to find the middle of the wire by lining the ends up and then just pulling it down like that. So there's our middle. And I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to thread a bead on. And there'll be links for all the tools and materials I end up using down in the video description below. So I've threaded on, did 3 wraps. Now I've attached a bead. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, like that. And now I'm going to add in our second core wire. Just to remind you, this is 18 gauge, and I'm going to wrap around both. And then I'm going to add my third wire, roughly centered up, if you can see, and wrap around all 3. Then I'm going to add in my fourth wire. I'm going to wrap around all 4. This is a pattern that I use pretty frequently in a lot of my designs. So I've wrapped around all 4, and I'm going to wrap around just 3. I'm going to wrap around just 2. And I'm going to wrap around just 1 3 times. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Just like that. And if you're finding it's a little uneven, try smooshing it with your fingernails. It can really do a lot to get everything lined up. So I've done our 3, and I'm going to attach another bead. Just sliding it right on there. And try to encourage it. There it goes. Wrapping around. And there's 1, 2, 3. And now I'm going to go 1 around 2. I'm going to separate out my wires just a little bit so I can tell who's who. 1 around 3. 1 around all 4. 1 around 3. 1 around 2. And then 3 around 1. Let me try to, there we go. Isolate it and separate it out. It makes it a lot easier to get your wire around. So there's 1, 2, and 3. So now I'm going to repeat this until I'm about right here. So I think that'll give me 4 or 5 repetitions of this on each side. And then I'll meet you guys right back here. So I've continued this repeating motif until I've had 10 repetitions and 11 beads. I like that odd number because it'll give us a nice one centered up there. On this end, I finished it with 50 coils, like 50 repetitions around. So here I've done 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 30. So that gives us a nice round 50. And if you don't trust your counting, you can definitely take a little ruler, and that's almost 2 centimeters, and that's almost 2 centimeters, so close enough. I'm going to snip off and hold on to the remainder of this wire. Snip. And I'm going to use my bent nose pliers to smoosh that down nicely. There we go. So now you can see this isn't really lining up at all. So what I'm going to do is start just shaping it with my fingers, finding the center, and kind of building my way out from there, making it into a nice little arc. We don't want to overdo it, but we certainly want to go just a little at a time to help give it a nice gradual curve. That way it'll fit quite snugly up against our piece. I'm going to give it a little bit more curve up here on the sides. There we are. That's looking pretty nice. And then we can actually use this excess piece of 26 gauge wire. And I'm going to count around from the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 on one side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 on the other side, and then come in 1, 1. So there's our center mark, right there on this guy. So it looks like I can just feed through right here. it doesn't have to be perfectly center, but you know, if you have the opportunity, why not? And I'm just pulling that through till it's nice and taut. And then bring that around. 3, 4, 5. So there's our center mark. And I want to bring this wire up through right here. If you can see that. And so I'm going to pull that nice and tight. Not too tight though. And then I'm going to come in with the other wire and threading through that same section just from the front. Grabbing it from the back and kind of pulling it down nice and tight. Trying our best to have everything nice and symmetrical. And so now I'm going to continue, more or less, whip stitching around. So I'm going to skip a hole, then go through the next. It's probably a better idea to not skip a hole actually. So I'm just going through the next spot in line. And now I'm going to feed up through the back, through the next section. You can kind of see just right there how it's sliding through. If you're having difficulty getting this to weave, a trick you could try is to use the 26 gauge for the weaving wires, and then use a 28 gauge for your stitching wire. And that way you'll be fitting a smaller needle, basically. You know, this is both the needle and the thread in this case. But you'll be able to fit it a little bit easier, but this doesn't seem to be too rough. So I'm going to keep whip stitching these two pieces together, and then coiling the remainder onto this base wire on both sides, and then I'll meet you all right back here. So here you can see I'm trying my best to keep this center line kind of lined up, and we've made our way over the rest of the way to this side. I've kind of abandoned my every hole rule. There are no rules in this. So I kind of skipped a few. But just test and see in which one. It's more about getting the wire to lay in a way that looks nice, and less about following a very specific pattern, at least for me. And so now, oops, well I guess I just threaded the same one twice, didn't I? So, no, that was the right one. Okay. I'm trying to get this wire to be symmetrical to over here, so I want it just as flush up on this side as what it is on this side. There we go. And now, it's kind of difficult for me. You might have an easier time of it than I do, but it's difficult whenever I have just a little bit of wire to hold on to do consistent and nice, quick coils. So I just start threading it through, and I only did like 5 or 6 repetitions, but I'm just going to keep kind of stitching and lacing that around. So you can see how it's coming along. And if it starts to get difficult for you to just do it with your bare hands, you can just use a pair of pliers. This is what I love my bent nose pliers for. Just come on through, grab it and bring it around. Cinch that down, bring it around, grab and cinch, grab, oops, and cinch. And then I think just one more. Oops. There we are. And just cinch that down nice and tight. And so now I'm going to snip just as close as I can to the rest of the wires. Snip. And then I'm going to bend these wires away just a little bit so that I can get my bent nose pliers in there and train that down, because I don't want any little pokey bits poking out. Because my goal with all of my jewelry is to be able to wear it on sensitive skin or on like a fine knitted sweater or something and not have it snag. And so now I'm going to come through with my nylon jaw pliers and just kind of coming at an angle and smush a little bit here on the sides, just as much as I can. Just keep everything nice and flat and even. And so now my next step is going to be to trim these two most outside wires to the same length. So it looks like I'm going to go for just 5 millimeters past where the coiling stops on both ends. And what this accomplishes is it gives me just enough room to be able to grip onto it with my pliers, my round nose pliers, and I'm just going to grip it as close to the tip of the pliers and as close to the tip of the wire as I can. And then just start turning it in, making a little loop, reorienting my pliers, and fitting that tip back in there, and then coiling it down like that. And you can kind of reposition your coils a little bit. You can try to have, just every spiral kind of comes out like its own creature sometimes. Sometimes it just can't be helped. Oops. So now gripping it and spiraling it in. There we go. And again, I want to deepen that in. There we go. That worked out very nicely. Checking it for symmetry. It's pretty close. And so now we can kind of consider how this is going to evolve from here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off another section of the 28 gauge parawire, and I'm doing another full arm span. And I'm going to coil on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I want to be very accurate about this, so I'm actually going to trim off the excess close as I can. Then use my bent nose pliers, or you could use flat nose or chain nose or needle nose, or just whatever. And now from here, we can slide this down and nestle it just right into there. And now I'm going to repeat this same kind of pattern. Move these guys out of the way. So there's one around 2, then one around 3. Do I want to keep doing it like that? No, we're going to change it up. So we wrapped up there, and then I'm wrapping one just around the third one. And by third one, I mean this wire. Then I'm finding the end of my wire and threading it through our focal point. And just pulling it through the way you would pull a needle and thread. Snugging that in. And then I'm going to wrap around 1. And then I'm going to wrap around 2. And then I'm going to wrap around 1. Then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to thread on a bead. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, and 3. Pushing that in very snugly. And then I'm going to wrap around both. And then I'm going to wrap around all 3. And then I think I'm actually going to modify it. Is that what I'm going to do? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to treat it like this is the 4th wire. I don't mind a little bit of variation in my wrapping. I'm not the type to be like, oh no, it's not completely perfect. So I'm just gonna, this is just what I'm doing now. So we've got that, pulling it in nice and snug. Then I'm gonna wrap around all 3, wrap around just 2, and then do 3 rotations around just the 1, 2, 3. But from here, I'm going to continue wrapping. I want a nice, like, maybe slightly bigger spiral, or do I want a smaller spiral? I don't know yet. Yeah, I think I'm going to do one more repetition of the pattern. I'm going to add on a bead. And also, this is just a demonstration of, like I mentioned before, creative problem solving. So there's in no way or form a wrong way to go about this. So there we go, 3 rotations around the 1, then 2 rotations, or 1 rotation around 2, 1 rotation around 3, and this looks like going to be the last one that I'm able to fit on this side. And so I'm just going to thread it through like our focal point was the 4th wire. And pull that down nice and tight. Just going to see if we can't. There we go, that's lining up a little better. And so 1 around 3, 1 around 2, 3 around 1. I'm going to thread on a bead, do 3 rotations, 1, 2, 3. And now we're not going to be stabilizing back to the focal point, so I'm just going to do 1 rotation around 2, 1 rotation around 3, don't want to get my wires tangled, 1 rotation around 2, and then 3 rotations around 1. And then I'm going to do 1 rotation around 2, 1 rotation around 3, 1 rotation around 2, and then 3 around 1. So there's 1 rotation around 2, 1 rotation around 3, 1 rotation around 2, and then 1, 2, 3. So from here, I'm going to just continue wrapping until I'm 4 or 5 millimeters away from the end of this wire. And this was the shorter of the 2, so the measuring that I'm doing for this one is going to be a little bit different than what I do for here. I'll definitely be getting out my ruler. Looks like I'll just be doing a centimeter past, so we'll keep that in mind doing the other side, unless you specifically want to make something that's asymmetrical. Here we go. Push all those coils down nice and snug. We can fit a few more. There we go. And so I'm going to trim this wire nice and flush. And then I'm going to smush it down. And now I'm going to use my round nose pliers to make a nice little spiral, or try to. Oops. There we go. So here you can see my pliers actually slipped just a bit. So this is a great opportunity to, again, troubleshoot. You can kind of smush that down with your pliers a little bit to get it to be less offensive. If you're working with bare copper or sterling silver, you could actually file it down some. I actually have some smaller round nose pliers that I might be able to get in here and kind of smush that down with. So that bothers me, but I can't quite justify trimming it off because then I won't have enough wire to work with to make a little spiral. But sometimes that stuff happens. It's just part of wire wrapping. If I had my smaller file, I could probably come in and deburr it a little bit, but Okay, so now I'm going to do that same thing to the other side, and I'll meet y'all right back here. So it actually turned out that this side was shorter than this side, so I feel much more comfortable now with coming through and undoing the that little mess up bit that I did. So I've just opened up that spiral some. I'm going to trim on the flaw line, and then I'm also going to trim, just spreading these wires just a hair. I'm going to trim my thin wires so I can just slip that right off, in theory. There we go. Push that back up. I'm going to trim down just a little further. And now I'm going to use my super ultra petite round nose pliers to get us a nice, good, cute little curl going there to match the other side. So again, not 100% perfect. It's actually a whole extra stitch on this side than what there is on that one, but I bet if we don't point it out to anyone, they won't notice, or they hopefully at least won't mind. So now it's getting up to where I'm going to be installing our little bead, for lack of a better term. And so to do that, I'm going to be taking the remainder of my 28 gauge wire, and I'm going to thread on a bead and the large decorative bead, and then another small bead. And I'm going to bring these down to the center of the wire by lining up our ends, and then just letting that relax and fall down, just like that. And it looks like those little beads actually take up more space than I planned for. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove them. You never know unless you try something, so there's no harm in that. I'm going to come in here and wrapping from behind, oops, did not mean to go off camera, wrapping from behind, I'm going to try to get in 3 rotations. So there's 1 and 2 and 3 rotations around the neck there. And coming directly to the other side, I'm going to wrap, and I'm going to bend these wires out of the way. Let me zoom out a bit for you guys, I keep going off camera. So wrapping from behind quite snugly, there's 1, oops, coming in from behind, there's 2, and there's 3. So now, where do we go from here? I'm thinking we'll pull these wires back and out of the way, and then cut off some fresh 28 gauge wire and do a coiling, like 5 coils around one, 2 around both, 5 around one, 2 around both. So I'm going to do that real quick and then come back and show y'all. See how it lines up now? So we could cut this wire right here. Snip, just as close as we can. Smush that down, nice and snug. And now I'll be coming through with the tail wire right here from behind. I don't want to undo any of my little wraps. Get that pushed in nice and tight. I'm going to do just 1 wrap around this single wire. It keeps trying to slip off. Dead nibbit. So let's get that quite secure behind there. Okay, so I'm going to hold it really snug with my fingers to get it to stay in spot. 1, 2, 3. Maybe if we give it a little bit of an overbend, then it'll decide to stay put a little better. There we go. And then 1 and 2. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see how that's coming along quite nicely. Eep. Okay, well there it went. It went ahead and slipped off the front side. No, it actually broke the wire. Crap. Okay. Well, disaster averted. What we're going to do is snip right there and smush it down. Creative problem solving. Yay. So now I'm feeling pretty confident that we probably shouldn't attach this bead that way. Just because it seems like a bit of a hot mess. So what we're going to do instead is I'm actually going to swoop in, and I hate to have wasted the wire, but live and learn. But it's just a little too messy for what I wanted, and you just gotta cut it off and count your losses. But what we can do is use our bent nose pliers to just free up this little bit that's still attached on there. And then over here, just trim and release. Oops, didn't mean to hit the camera. Just cleaning off all that messed up wire. But we still have this little piece right here. And I'm going to see if we can't take it and pull it off this wire to then thread on to these wires. Just to try. That way it can fill in that little gap a little bit for us. So it's like a wire transplant. And that's not working as well as I wanted it to. Okay, so I tried to salvage it. But what we're going to do is start right here on the other side. We've built it out a little bit over here, so now we're going to build it up some over here. There we are. Smush that down there. No, not quite. Okay, so it's 3, and then 4, and then 5. So from here, we can come in and come around from behind. And I'm just making a little loop around this like fiddlehead paisley end. Excuse me. That we are then going to feed this bead onto. And just let it follow down the wire. And now coming in still from behind. And then around, looping around our fiddlehead here. I'm not going to bother trying to attach it right now over on this side. I'm just going to feed right back through. Using again our wire as the needle and the thread. And just feeding through. We want to make sure to not get a kink here. So I'm going to insert my finger to kind of keep it on track until the last minute where it just pulls through nice and easy. Thank goodness. Where I'm going to wrap around the fiddlehead once more just to stabilize everything. Well, not once more, but just kind of snug it down. And and then I'm going to wrap from behind. 1 and 2. And then I'm going to continue on with this pattern of 2 around 2, 5 around 1. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 1, 2, smush that all together. And I'm going to continue this until I get to right here. And so just for trying to speed this up just a bit, I'm going to do that off camera, and then I'll meet y'all right back here. So we've reached the end, and I'm leaving the rest of this wire attached. I still have quite a bit, so hopefully it'll take me places. I'm not going to bother stabilizing this side to the little fiddle head. So I'm just going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, get a little bit of a bend in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna trim the tail. And smush it down. Gotta stay on top of those loose ends. And then I'm gonna try to go ahead and get this slid down. So we're missing a little bit of a bumpy spot right there, but I don't think that's gonna be the end of the world. No, yeah, it looks like the end of the world. Okay, so change of plans. And now I'm coming in and I'm actually going to snip super close right there. I'm going to use my bent nose pliers to try to, I'm going to use my fingernail first and then use my pliers to try to get that just up and out of the way. Looks like I might need some finer tipped pliers. There we go. Maybe? Yeah. Just grab and pull. There it goes. Okay. So now we can push it down, and that looks much more snug. But I am going to try to butt this down a little bit more. Excuse me. Keep it all nice and tight looking. There we go. It's looking pretty good. And so now from here, I'm going to be repeating, well, let me get that tangle out. Okay, so from here I'm going to be repeating that same pattern until it meets up at this center crossroads up here. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll meet y'all right back here. So I've reached the crossroads, and now it's time to start having some sort of bail happen. Fortunately, I still have quite a bit of wire coming off of both ends, so I'm going to bend outward with the 18 gauge core wires in each direction, and then bend up and out these other two. That way they'll fit together quite snugly. I'm going to use the wire that's closest to me to start doing a, what are we doing here? Is it just going to be a figure 8 weave? Maybe? You know, I think we might do that. Just a pretty tight little, wait, I don't know though, because that's not a whole lot of wire going on there. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of a figure 8 weave. I mean, I guess that could be enough to do a bail. I guess that's what we get for working with scrap wire. Normally I would have preferred for all the wires to have at least been this long or longer, but this one's quite short. So, what are we doing? I'm going to do just a couple of repetitions of this figure 8 weave. And then I'm actually going to trim these two to be the same length. Whoa! Pinged across the room. And then I'm going to trim our sides here to be 2 fingers wide. And I'm going to take, this wire is on this one. So I'm just going to coil it. And to make it a little bit faster, I'm going to offset it to the side. Oops. And be careful to not snag any of my other wires. I'm just going to keep coiling around and pushing down and cinching it to keep everything nice and snug. And I'm not bothering to count, I'm just getting the coils done. And I'm going to bring it to where it's about 6 millimeters from the end. That looks pretty good. Nah, farther. Okay. Okay, and so from here, I'm going to snip the end, save that wire, smoosh the end down. And now I'm going to take this same wire that I was just using, and I'm going to start coiling on this one. And going about in this manner, I'm going to cover these other wires, these other core wires, in little wrapped coils. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll meet you all right back here. So I have finished doing the coils on all the wires, and now I am going to do some decorative little spirals because I feel like it. Let me zoom out for you guys. And I'm just kind of cinching that in. I want to repeat this little bit of a motif that we've got going on here. I use my finger on the back side to try to help keep the spirals happening on the same plane. Like I want to keep it nice and two-dimensional. So then from here, have an idea. Okay. I have a size 8 knitting needle. This is 5 millimeters for a mandrel. Bending this forward quite a bit, setting my mandrel on here, and then I'm going to just bend this around the mandrel. Because much smaller than 5 millimeters, and I don't think a lot of my chains would fit through there, but this looks like it'll still be pretty good. And so now I'm going to build my spirals off to the side, grabbing quite close to the tip of the wire and the tip of my pliers, but as it comes through, I'm going to push that in towards the front. See how that's happening? So now I'm going to grab it again from the front and curl it up a little bit more, trying my best to stabilize it here on the front side, and trying my best even more to not have my pliers slip the way that they did earlier. So now I'm just going to push my mandrel back in, make sure everything is sitting quite snugly. And I'm going to deepen these spirals just a little bit more, keeping the mandrel in there so that way I'm not reducing it to the point that it'll be distorted. And just like that, I think, ooh, ouch, I think we have a stabilized bail. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to smoosh and get that to just lay down a little bit. This is also a fantastic opportunity that if I had like a little decorative bead or something, so I'm going to thread on one of our 2mm beads, a 4mm amethyst, and then another 2mm bead. And I'm going to have this come down to the center of our wire, just like so. And now I'm going to take both of our ends, and simultaneously I'm going to feed them through these little loops that we've made. And making sure that they're exiting in relatively the same spot on the back side, on either side of our bail here. And then I'm just going to pull that on through. Try to keep everything nice and snugged up. I think that looks pretty cool. Yeah. Gives us a nice little topper going on there. And now from here, oops, didn't mean to hit the tripod. I'm just going to bind off these wires in between the coils on this piece coming off here. And if they aren't going in quite as snugly as I would like, then I can actually just open it up a little bit. Nylon jaw pliers are much preferred for this because they'll keep from scratching it. Just tighten that down nicely. And I actually think I might have come in from the wrong direction. So let me see if maybe coming in from above works better, because you really want to be able to snug that down. Sorry for dog noises. In between the wires. But no, that doesn't seem to be any better. And I'm going to zoom in just a bit for you so you can see maybe better what I'm talking about. I really want these wires to kind of sit snug in between each other. And it looks like that might be happening okay. But, let me try from the other direction. So we're coming through. I'm going to enter in from above and hook around. Yeah, that's working out much better. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and snip it. And I'm going to come in again with my nylon jaw pliers and put that spiral back where it goes. Now I'm going to do that same thing on the other side. So just be patient and persistent with both yourself and the project. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and trim it. Smush it down. And spiral it in. Retesting our bail. And so that's how it's come out. I'm pretty pleased with this, you guys. Like, for going in with no plan, I think worse things could have happened. Hey y'all, thank you so much for hanging out with me during this tutorial. I hope that it was helpful to you. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave them down below. Now, down in the video description, I do have the tools and materials listed, as well as I'm going to try my best to find a component very similar to this one. That way, if you want to recreate this specifically, you'll be able to. But I feel like these techniques and challenges that we faced with this project can be very realistically applied to a lot of different wire wrapping situations. So yeah, check out the video description below for the tools and materials, and then also there are links to my social media if you want to tag us on Instagram, or if you want to follow us on Facebook where I do periodic giveaways and stuff. Please feel free to do that. I also have links to our Patreon, where all of our free daily tutorials are brought to you by the generosity of our patrons. And pledges start at just $1 a month, but you can also follow us on Patreon without pledging anything and still get access to some of our behind the scenes stuff that I post exclusively to Patreon. So again, thank you guys so much for all of your support and encouragement and everything. Yeah, happy crafting. I will see you guys around. Bye.